Have you ever had one of those afternoons where the noise of the world just feels a little too loud, and you find yourself imagining what it would be like to simply disappear into a small, quiet cottage, tucked away at the edge of a forest? It is a thought that many of us carry like a secret, a soft mental image of a place where the only notifications are the sounds of birds in the eaves, and the only deadline is the setting of the sun. And if you have ever felt this pull toward the simple and the small, please know that you are not alone. There is something deeply human about this longing, and today we are going to spend some time gently exploring what it is about that cottage fantasy that speaks so clearly to our hearts, because it turns out that this desire usually isn't about the cottage itself, but about something much deeper that we are all searching for. Many people notice that the fantasy starts with a sense of scale, the idea that our world has become too big, too fast, and too full of things we cannot see or touch. And in response, we begin to dream of a life that fits inside a single, cozy room, with a stone hearth and a heavy wooden door. This is the part many people don't realize at first, but the cottage represents a return to a world that makes sense to our senses, where the things we do with our hands have an immediate and visible result, and where we are allowed to just exist, without the pressure of being watched or measured. When we imagine ourselves in that quiet kitchen, perhaps moving slowly to put a kettle on the stove, or watching the steam rise against a window pane, we aren't necessarily looking for a new hobby or a different house, but rather a different way of being in time. Some find themselves imagining a morning that begins without an alarm, where the light filtering through the leaves tells you it's time to wake up, and where the first task of the day is something as grounded as tending to a small patch of herbs or sweeping a porch. It can feel like we are constantly performing for an invisible audience in our daily lives, and the cottage offers the relief of being unobserved, a place where you can wear your oldest sweater and read a book for hours simply because you want to, not because it's productive or because it looks a certain way to anyone else. Here's where the fantasy becomes truly comforting. It's the idea that our worth isn't tied to how much we can handle, or how many things we can juggle at once, but rather to the quality of our presence in a single moment. Many people describe the cottage as a place where nature isn't a destination you have to drive to, but the very background of your life, a constant, steady presence that reminds you that growth happens slowly, and that seasons change whether we hurry them or not. We often feel a sense of overwhelm, not because we are lazy, but because we are trying to process more information in a single day than our ancestors might have processed in a year, and the mind naturally seeks out a container that is smaller and more manageable. It is commonly felt as a craving for visible effort and tangible rewards, like the warmth of a fire you built yourself, or the taste of a meal you spent the whole afternoon preparing, because these things offer a sense of completion that our digital tasks often lack. In the modern world, so much of our work is invisible and endless, and the cottage fantasy offers a world where the work has a beginning, a middle, and a clear, satisfying end. This is a quiet rebellion of sorts, though a very gentle one, where we stop trying to optimize every second and instead allow ourselves the luxury of a slow rhythm. You might notice that when you picture this quiet life, you aren't thinking about your status or your achievements. You are thinking about the texture of a wool blanket, the smell of damp earth after a rain, and the sound of wind in the chimney. It is a longing for a pace that feels human, a pace that allows for pauses and for looking out the window, at nothing in particular without feeling a sense of guilt. Some people notice that this desire grows strongest during those times when we feel most spread thin, as if our internal compass is trying to point us back toward a center that we've lost track of in the rush of everything else. It's a subtle shift, but an important one, to realize that wanting to disappear to a cottage isn't about escaping your responsibilities or your love for the people in your life. It's about a need to reclaim your own attention and to feel like the protagonist of your own days again. We live in a time where we are constantly accessible to everyone at all hours, and the thought of a cottage with no Wi-Fi and a heavy door is a way of dreaming about boundaries that actually hold. Many find themselves imagining a world where the must-dos are replaced by want-tos, and where the simple act of making a cup of tea is treated with the same importance as any major task. It's common to feel that our lives have become a series of abstractions. Numbers on a screen, emails in an inbox, words on a page. And the cottage provides a grounded, physical reality that feels solid beneath our feet. This isn't about being anti-technology or wanting to live in the past, but about a deep-seated need for balance and for a space where our nervous systems can finally settle into a state of rest. There is a specific kind of peace in the idea of a routine without pressure, where you do things because the sun is up, or because you are hungry, or because the garden needs water, rather than because a calendar told you to. It can feel like we are always preparing for some future moment. And the cottage fantasy is a way of practicing how to be right here, right now, in a way that feels safe. People often describe the relief of a smaller world as a relief from the weight of global awareness, where for just a little while, your primary concern is the temperature of the room or the ripening of a tomato on the vine. This doesn't mean we don't care about the world, but rather that we recognize our own limits and the need for a sanctuary where we can gather our strength. Here is something many people find especially soothing: the idea that in this quiet place, you don't have to be good at anything. You can just be. You can paint a messy picture, or bake a loaf of bread that doesn't rise perfectly, or sit in silence for an hour, and there is no one there to judge the outcome, or turn it into a metric of success. It is a space for the private self to breathe, away from the constant comparison and the endless scrolling that makes us feel like we are always falling behind. The desire to disappear is often just a desire to be found by ourselves again, to remember what we like when no one is telling us what to like, and to hear our own thoughts without the static of 1,000 other voices. When we imagine that cottage, we are often imagining a version of ourselves that is less frayed, more patient, and more deeply connected to the physical world. It is a reminder that we are biological creatures who need quiet, and light and air, and a sense of belonging to the land we walk on. You might notice that the fantasy doesn't involve being busy. It involves being purposeful but unhurried, which is a distinction our modern culture often forgets. It's the difference between rushing to finish a task and sinking into the process of the task itself. Many notice that the cottage fantasy is particularly vivid when they feel a loss of control, offering a mental space where the world is predictable and kind. It is a way of nurturing the part of us that feels overwhelmed by the complexity of modern systems, providing a simplified map where we know exactly where we stand. This longing is a signal, a gentle tap on the shoulder from our inner selves, reminding us that we weren't meant to live at the speed of a processor, even if we never actually move to a cottage in the woods. The fact that we dream of it tells us something beautiful about what we value. We value peace, we value presence, and we value the simple beauty of being alive. This is the part where the fantasy becomes a tool for the present, because once we understand that the cottage is a feeling of being centered and quiet, we can start to look for small ways to invite that feeling into the life we have right now. It might be the way we hold a warm mug in the morning, or the way we choose to leave the phone in another room for an hour, or the way we plant a single flower in a pot on a windowsill. The cottage isn't a destination we have to reach to be happy. It's a reminder of the quiet, meaningful space that already exists inside of us, waiting for us to slow down enough to notice it. It is a signal that our hearts are craving a pace that feels human, and acknowledging that craving is a compassionate act of self-care. So, the next time you find your mind wandering toward a small house with smoke curling from the chimney and a garden full of wildflowers, don't see it as a sign that you are failing at your life or that you are trying to run away. See it as a beautiful, quiet reminder of what matters to you, of your need for rest, your love for the earth, and your desire to exist simply for the sake of existing. You don't need to fix the longing, you just need to listen to it, because it is telling you that you deserve a world that is kind to your spirit, and a pace that lets you breathe. The cottage is always there in your mind, a steady and comforting sanctuary that you can visit whenever the world feels a bit too much. reminding you that there is a part of you that remains quiet, untouched, and perfectly at peace, no matter how loud the rest of the world becomes. It is the feeling of coming home to yourself, of closing the door on the noise, and sitting by the fire of your own inner life. And that is a destination you can always find, wherever you happen to be. If this reflection resonated with you, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for being here.